When it comes to economy compact cars, the Mazda 3 has long been the choice for enthusiasts when you can't quite decide between something as sporty as a Volkswagen GTI versus something more economy-minded like a Honda Civic. Now, when the company introduced the all-new 4th generation Mazda 3 back in 2019, it really showed that Mazda is trying to reposition the 3 as a more premium option in the economy compact segment. Now, for 2024, the Mazda 3 pretty much stays the same, although we do get a new infotainment system on the inside. But the company made some pretty big changes back in 2021 when they finally put a turbo engine under the hood and paired it with standard all-wheel drive. So as you can see, this week we are testing the latest 2024 Mazda 3 Turbo Premium Plus hatch with up to 250 horsepower under the hood. And the big question I want answered, if you guys are simply not going to drive an SUV and you want a sporty-minded economy compact car with a more of a premium vibe, how does the latest 2024 Mazda 3 Turbo continue to stack up? Stay tuned to find out. So for 2024, there are no exterior styling differences, so I thought I'd start off this review by showing you guys what's underneath the hood. Now, the Mazda 3 continues to be a little bit unique in the segment because Mazda offers it with a choice of two different engines, both of them 2.5 liters. However, this is the big engine that you want if you want to get the maximum amount of performance. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Mazda family, you should know this engine quite well. It's the company's signature Skyactiv G, which basically means it has gasoline direct injection with a high compression ratio and unique exhaust manifold. It has a dynamic pressure turbo, a single turbo design strapped onto it that delivers up to 17.5 pounds of boost pressure, the max boost pressure. And the number outputs are pretty impressive. 250 horsepower when you have it running on premium gas and 320 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers are nearly 10 more horsepower versus something like the Volkswagen GTI, which has like 241 horsepower. If you feed it regular gas, however, the fuel or the horsepower drops to 227 and 310 pound-feet of torque. Those are still pretty impressive numbers. Again, the torque figure is what gives this car that effortless feel. It all goes out through a 6-speed automatic transmission. There is no manual available with the turbo. If you want a manual, you'll have to step down to this engine without the turbo, which makes 191 horsepower. The 6-speed auto is definitely one of the more dated aspects of this powertrain. It's smooth shifting, it's just not the quickest shifting, and it has kind of a wider gear ratio spread. As a result, fuel economy is rated at 23 in the city, 31 on the highway. The company's iActive Sense all-wheel drive is going to be standard on this model, which is great considering you have all that power. You don't have to deal with front-wheel drive torque steer and whatnot. It has a 12.7 gallon fuel tank, which means the range on this car is around, I'd say around 280 miles. It's not great because of the 26 mpg combined and the smaller fuel tank capacity. Mazda doesn't claim a 0 to 60 time, but we got just under 6 seconds in our testing last year with a 2023 model. It has a top speed of around 134 miles an hour. And as this car sits, it weighs in at just under 3,400 pounds. But closing up the hood, let's go ahead and talk about the exterior styling, which got no changes for 2024, which is not a bad thing. However, I do think that the Mazda 3 is due for a significant refresh in terms of the design because we've seen it now for about 5 years. You can see this particular one is the top of the line Premium Plus painted in this polymetal gray exterior. You can see the color itself is beautiful. It's a $450 charge extra, and it has some nice metallic fleck. It kind of looks a little bit like bluish gray. So if you like that kind of tone, you're going to really like this color. You can see the turbo models come standard with kind of the black accents to the 5-point signature grille. You have this front air dam that's included with this Premium Plus trim, which gives it a unique aggressive front splitter look, almost like a Mazda Speed 3. And then all Mazda 3s come standard with the company's full LED headlights with LED daytime running lights and turn signals, LED low and high beams. Those headlights are also adaptive. I would like to see Mazda put fog lights on this car. They used to have fog lights in the previous generation, but overall, it still has a very upscale look to it. I just think that it's time for Mazda to kind of give it the same kind of updated styling cues that we've seen, for example, like on the CX-50 or on the CX-90. Moving around the side profile, you can see the hatchback model is the smaller between the two body styles. There's also a sedan. The sedan is around 8 inches longer, but the hatch is around 175.6 inches long. This is about the same size as something like a Honda Civic hatch, a Subaru Crosstrek or a Subaru Impreza. The Honda Civic hatch is a little bit longer by about 4 inches. It has a 107.3 inch long wheelbase. It got an inch longer wheelbase versus the previous generation. generation when they redesigned it. And then you can distinguish this one as a turbo because of the black finish 5-spoke wheels. These are an 18-inch wheel. All hatchbacks technically come with 18-inch wheels. If you want a 16-inch wheel, you'll have to step down to a sedan. They're wrapped in a 215 by 45 R18 Bridgestone Turenza road tires. So these tires are skinny, and it definitely does affect the grip. This car would have even more grip if it had like a 235 millimeter tire. You can see the brakes, all disc brakes with an 11.6-inch rotor at the front. The all-wheel drive turbo has a slightly bigger rotor in the front. You have a 10.4-inch rotor at the back. You have an independent front suspension, but a semi-independent torsion beam at the rear. That's one of the big controversies with this generation Mazda 3 is they went to a twist beam in the back, and all Mazda 3s have around 5.5 inches of ground clearance. Now you can see mirrors are not power folding, but you can see there's an integrated turn signal. They are black painted. There's just a standard sunroof on this model here with some chrome trim. I actually thought that this model would have blacked out the chrome. There is a carbon edition on the turbo, which is new for 2024. I'm not entirely sure if that blacks out the window trim. I haven't had a chance to see one of those in person. Over here on this angle, you can see the most controversial part of this generation was this angle right here. It's just a little bit chunky, but I've kind of gotten used to the look. I think this car still has an attractive design to it, and it certainly has aged pretty well. The rear has kind of a similar look to the rear taillights as the front headlights with this kind of dual halo design, circular design. It's got an LED for the turn signal and the reverse light and the brake lights, which is nice. There's still lots of badging back here with the Mazda 3 all-wheel drive badge, and then there's also a Skyactiv G turbo badge. The turbo badge still looks aftermarket to me. I don't like that. The exhaust system, you can see it's got dual outlet exhaust tips, and the tips are a little bit larger on the turbo model. That is a pretty simple design for the rear bumper, and then you also have a subtle rear hatch spoiler back here along with a rear window wiper. No power liftgates available. If you reach underneath the Mazda logo, you'll find the button to open up the hatch, and Mazda says you get around 20 cubic feet of total storage space. They don't quote what the amount is when you fold down the seats. I'd say it probably doubles that to around 40-ish cubic feet. You can see the opening is on the smaller side. It is nicely well finished and well carpeted. There's also a temporary spare tire underneath here, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat, but there's no underfloor storage really. But overall, if you need a little bit more space in your hatchback, you might want to check out a Honda Civic hatch or a Subaru Impreza hatchback. So on the outside, the Mazda 3 pretty much looks identical to a 2023 version, but let's go ahead and check out the interior because this is where Mazda did make a change for 2024. Before we get inside, however, let me show you guys the key fob. You can see this is the current Mazda Intelligent Access key. It is a much larger key versus the previous key, and I actually much preferred that, but you can see it's got the Mazda logo on it. It's very Volvo European-esque with the buttons on the side here for lock, unlock. You can also activate the panic function. There's no remote release for the lift back because, as you guys know, it's on a power lift back, and I don't believe Mazda offers a phone as a key, at least as an option at this moment. Now you can see approaching the door handle, it's very traditional looking. It's a nice design. Touch that little area there that locks the door. This car also has a walk-away auto lock feature, which you can turn it on and off. It doesn't have an auto unlock feature, however, so to unlock it, you have to touch the back of the door handle, and that will unlock the door for you. Now, looking at the interior, Mazda offers a choice between like a lighter interior to like a red interior. This is the all black interior that looks okay with the polymetal gray. You can see the black leather kind of has like a little brownish undertone in the perforations with this kind of like dark brown stitching. Mazda offers a really nice dark cranberry red along with like a tan interior. I personally think the polymetal gray with the red would be a great color combination. You can see the driver's seat is an 8-way power with 2-person lumbar, and you also have 2-person memory here on the driver's side. These seats are heated. However, Mazda does not offer ventilated seats on the 3, which is a shame. You have heated steering wheel, although the heat element is only on the 9 and 3 grip. The passenger seat is just a manual 4-way, so I was hoping Mazda would have put a power passenger seat as well. In terms of the door panel, you can see it's got a soft touch injection molded plastic. Actual stitching here with the leather material and the stitching, contrast stitching for that area. You have this nice metal accent trim piece for the door handle that kind of connects into the actual trim of the door panel. Padded over here. Window controls, they feel pretty high quality. They are one touch up down for all 4. No power folding mirrors, but you can see my tester also has the 12 speaker Bose stereo with some metal speaker covers, which look really upscale and premium. Down here, it's hard touch plastic. You have a little bit of storage. So overall, the interior looks familiar, but it makes a great first impression. Now, getting inside, you can see with only 5.5 inches of ground clearance, the step-in height is pretty low. As I get in and shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. It has the usual chimes that Mazdas are known for. And then when you want to start the vehicle up, the start-stop button is right here where you'd expect it to be. And you can see this is not a hybrid or a mild hybrid, so it has a standard starter noise because it's not, again, electrified in any way. Now, this interior pretty much looks identical to a 2023 that I last showed you. However, the biggest change is basically that. The center screen is now 10.25 inches, which is larger versus the 8.8 that you had in the 2023 model. This screen is now a touchscreen. However, it's not a touchscreen when you're in the Mazda actual software for the infotainment display. It becomes a touchscreen when I go into the Apple CarPlay, which the CarPlay itself is wireless now. It includes wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As you can see, the screen is a touchscreen when I have it in the CarPlay display, and it looks a lot nicer. You can see basically what Mazda did is it now occupies a bigger section of the screen. This is essentially a similar piece, although I think the old one had a different actual bezel. So the bezel is new, although I'd have to like sit in a 2023 to kind of see the differences myself. I do kind of wish that Mazda would have just made it a 12-inch display and kind of gone out to the outer edges of the corner. And I also think the screen is too far back. If they're gonna make this a touchscreen, they should have pulled the screen forward, because look, this is a really far reach. I have to literally kind of lean over to reach the touch element, and that touchscreen works when you're also moving. Now you can turn that feature on and off in the settings in the actual Mazda native software. It should just honestly always be on, but it is nice that this is now wireless, and it also has a touchscreen, which is great. In terms of the materials, you can see there's a soft touch injection molded plastic here. The instrument panel is not fully digital, although you have kind of like a digital center screen where you have this analog look tachometer, or it's actually an analog tachometer with an analog look speedometer, analog for the fuel and temperature gauge, of course. Padded over here on this portion of the dash, along with real leather stitching with actual stitching here. This is real padded leather. It feels really expensive and high quality. You have some more metal trim here along the gauges, which is nice. And then the steering wheel, as you can see, it's a really large steering wheel. I kind of actually wish that it wasn't quite as big in terms of the diameter. Mazda doesn't do a flat bottom wheel. You have paddles on the wheel itself to control the shifting for the automatic if you'd like. Buttons, of course, control your audio, and your cruise control controls the horn. It sounds good. It doesn't sound pathetic or puny like on some economy compact cars. And you can see over here, there are a couple of buttons for the stability control off, your parking sensors. You can also turn off all the driver assistance aids, and then push that button here. You can see that activates the full 360 camera, which is included when you guys go for this premium plus trim. The screen itself is perfectly acceptable. Again, it's not a touchscreen when you're in the Mazda system here. It's only a touchscreen when you're in the CarPlay, but you have different views for the camera, of course, with a curved view, and that's all very nice. The graphics are pretty much what I expect them to be. Now down here you can see you have dual zone climate control with actual knobs, which have a nice high quality feel. Metal covers some of the actual knobs and buttons, which is really nice. You have 3-level heated seats, which again, there's a button here for a cooled seat. It would be nice for Mazda to add a cooled seats. And then down here you can see there's a wireless phone charging pad. I don't believe the 2023 had that from the factory. It was a dealer accessory. So that wireless charging pad is nice. It fits my iPhone 14 Pro Max pretty nicely. And you can see my phone is charging up now that I put it properly on the screen. You have cup holders here, which is nice. And then you have some piano black plastic trim here, which does show scratches and fingerprints. Don't love this material. The shifter you can see is very traditional. Put it into reverse, there's your regular backup camera with the full top-down 360. And there's also a sport button here that goes basically on or off, so it's pretty simple there. If you don't want to use the touchscreen, you can use this little dial to control the CarPlay. The dial is what you have to use if you are going to use the Mazda native system. You can see there's a volume knob here, electronic parking brake, and then you have some nice padded area here where your knees may hit this, which is nice. And then you can see this slides back to reveal 2 USB-C charging ports. This has also been upgraded because I think the 2023 had a USB-A charging port. This is a relatively shallow storage compartment. Your SD card for the GPS is going to be found in there. The seats definitely are a little on the firmer side. They are pretty comfortable and supportive, but try the seats out for yourselves to make sure they work for you. The bolstering could be a little bit more aggressive, but the heat function works well. I just wish it was a cooled, and this seat here is manual completely. You have an auto dimming rear view mirror over here, which is nice. Mazda doesn't offer a digital camera rear view mirror in this car. You have some LED map lighting in here, a woven material, or kind of a cardboard material, I'm sorry, for the roof. You have a standard sunroof that opens up with a manual shade. And then you can see the glove compartment is a pretty big dashboard inset style where the lid itself is damped but not lined with felt. Overall storage in this car is adequate, but not exactly class leading. So overall, the interior, basically the biggest news is going to be that newer 10.25-inch display. The Bose audio also sounds good for you audiophiles out there, but I would like to see Mazda basically push the screen forward and add ventilated seats. That would make this interior even nicer. But let me go ahead and show you guys the backseat area, because this is where the Mazda 3 is a little bit on the smaller side because of its compact dimensions. You can see the door opens a decent amount. You can see in terms of the materials back here, it is soft touch injection molded plastic, which is nicer than the competition. They tend to put hard plastic here. Leather and actual stitching here and stitching over here, which is nice. This is also padded. And then in terms of the legroom space, you can see there's around 35 inches of legroom back here, which is on the lower end of the segment. These seats, they don't recline, but they do offer, obviously, the ability to kind of fold down completely to where you can expand the cargo area. This floor is almost completely flat, but again, some competitors offer a little bit more backseat space. But let me go ahead and get back here and show you guys what it's like for somebody my height. Now, shutting the door, this is where I'd have the seat to drive for my driving position. You can see my knees are coming somewhat close to the actual seat back. In terms of legroom space, it's okay. It feels a little bit tight. If I wanted to cross my legs, I kind of have to kind of move my leg around the seat, which kind of gets in the way. There is a large hump here that intrudes on the middle passenger. No rear seat air vents, no USB charging ports, no heated rear seats. I kind of expected that, especially at a price tag of around 38,000 bucks. I kind of wanted to have those features. You can see if you want to fit 3 across, it's going to be a little bit tight. If you fold this down here, you can see there's an armrest with 2 cup holders. Some Mazda models like the CX-5 offer heated seats and storage and like USB charging ports in the cup holder. So Mazda, I'm surprised they didn't put that here. On the 3, you have basically one storage cubby. And then in terms of the headroom space, you can see if I lean back, my head gets really close to the ceiling. So kind of keep that in mind. If you need a bigger back seat, the Mazda 3 is definitely not going to be the one you're going to be after. So here we are back inside a 2024 Mazda 3. And as you guys know, this car has quite a long history with enthusiasts. I mean, if you guys can't decide between going mainstream or premium, or you just want something a little sportier than usual, the Mazda 3 has always been kind of the easy choice. And for 2024, in terms of the driving characteristics, things pretty much stay the same. So it'll be pretty similar, of course, to my thoughts on the 2023 model that I drove about a year ago, although there are constantly changes in this segment of vehicle. The Mazda 3 has always been pretty consistent. So this model that we're driving is the Premium Plus hatchback turbo, which comes standard with the company's all-wheel drive system. It has a pretty ballsy engine under the hood, 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque. That is more powerful versus the Volkswagen GTI, which is a hot hatch, if you can believe it. And it does give this car some pretty fast acceleration times for a vehicle in this space. Now, it only comes with a 6-speed automatic. Sadly, no manual, no dual clutch, but let's go ahead and see what we can do 0 to 60 wise. I have it in sport mode here. We'll go ahead and we'll brake torque it. It actually spins the front tires every time you do that. 5.8 seconds 0 to 60, which is basically the same time that I got in this car on that same stretch of road last year. So very impressed to see that the times are very consistent. This is one of the quickest accelerating premium or mainstream compact cars that you can buy, and you can credit that, of course, to the big 2.5 liter turbo with all-wheel drive and this smooth 6-speed auto. Now the 6-speed is smooth, but it is down to even like 4 gears in some cases compared to some rivals. Some other rivals use CVTs. Mazda's 6-speed is perfectly acceptable if you've never driven the newer transmissions, but it would be nice if Mazda would put an 8-speed auto. They technically have an 8-speed in the new CX-90, but I don't expect that to show up in the 3 because this is a different front-wheel drive platform. Let's just floor it here from a stop and see what we can get. Definitely doesn't feel as fast when you don't brake torque it. It short shifts at around 500 RPM, 6.18 seconds there. So 6.18 is pretty acceptable. So in the real world, you'll basically be doing 6 seconds, low 6 seconds, 0 to 60, which is plenty fast. I mean, this is tons of performance. I mean, compare that to, you know, other vehicles like a Corolla or a Civic that'll probably take around a second to a second and a half slower, 0 to 60 wise. So this is fast. This is satisfyingly quick. And the Mazda 3 still feels like one of the sportier driving vehicles. Remember, this is built on their latest Skyactiv platform. The downside with this new generation, this 4th gen, is Mazda made the switch to a torsion beam semi-independent rear suspension as opposed to the multi-link independent that you had in the previous generation. The company claims it's improved handling and NVH, which I would have to drive the 2 cars back to back. Thankfully, most of the Mazda's sporty driving characteristics is preserved here. The steering is just so quick and just alive. It just transmits exactly what I'm looking for in terms of feedback back to the steering wheel from the front tires. The suspension feels on the firmer side. The body has very little body lean. I mean, is it a Mazda Speed 3? No. I pretty much asked that question in my review of this car last year. It's not a Mazda Speed 3, but what this car is is a perfect stopgap. It's a perfect compromise for when you can't decide between something like sporty as a Volkswagen GTI or something as luxurious feeling as like an Audi A3, for example. This has, you know, characteristics of a luxury brand and a mainstream brand, and it's kind of wrapped in a very powerful, very quick package that has relatively comfortable seats. The seats are firmer than I want them to be, but they do hold you in place nicely, and I took this vehicle on a longer drive. It's perfectly fine as well in those longer trips. When I put my foot down here, the all-wheel drive system can send power to outside wheels if it needs to, and it just kind of goes. That's the beauty about all-wheel drive, is there's no torque steer, there's no wheel hop, a little bit of wheel slippage when you brake torque it, but it has plenty of satisfying grip, and it's going to be really nice for those of you who live in a snowbelt area. I mean, today in PA it's 32 degrees and it was snow flurrying earlier, and again, I have no worries with this car. I do wish that Mazda would put fatter tires on this car. I mean, it's got an 18-inch wheel, but it's just a skinny 215 wide tire. I imagine if I was an owner of this vehicle, I would swap them out for a 235 wood tire, so I'd put a 20 millimeter fatter tire, and I suspect Mazda did that for fuel economy reasons, because they wanted to, again, have less rolling resistance versus if they put a fatter tire on this car. So that's kind of the reason why it's got these skinny tires. It sacrifices the grip. But overall, you know, just driving in normal mode as opposed to sport, the car goes about its business just fine with very little fuss. The transmission is pretty responsive, and when it shifts, it does shift very smoothly. It just has very widely spaced ratios. So acceleration could improve, fuel economy could improve if Mazda just added 2 more gears. Now, in terms of the rest of the driving characteristics, the suspension is on the firmer side, so you do have to get used to a firmer ride. It is pretty quiet in here, however. The engine makes a satisfyingly deep growl, although there's no kind of burbles or pops from the exhaust. This is not a hot hatch. Again, it's just an economy compact car that's more premium, that has plenty of effortless punch. It's just very, very smooth, but it's a little bit on the firmer side. Visibility in here is also good. The roof is low. For somebody my height, I feel like I'm kind of sitting close to the roof, but you can see out of the front, the side, the rear pretty well. Mazda's latest suite of active driver safety tech is for the most part standard on most of the higher trims, definitely included on this trim. I love the heads-up display that's included. The adaptive cruise control works nicely. It also will kind of keep you centered in the lane, and it'll, you know, keep a distance away when you're driving in traffic as well, which is important. And if you guys want, there are paddles on the wheel here where you can kind of take control of the manual shifting if you'd like. Only 6 to choose from, and I have to say, it's pretty responsive. When I pull the paddle, it's a little bit faster on the downshift versus the upshift, but it's nice that Mazda gives you that manual control, and you can also, you know, switch this over here. The little controller here, the joystick for the shifter, you can shift into manual, and there's also a sport mode in the transmission. It's either on or off. Mazda keeps it pretty simple, which is nice. In terms of fuel efficiency, in my week's worth of testing, I averaged around 24 mpg in mixed driving. That number is pretty average. I mean, it's about what I expected. This is rated at 23 in the city, 31 on the highway. On the highway, I got around 29 mpg. So again, if you're looking for the best gas mileage, the Mazda 3, especially with the turbo, or even the regular Mazda 3, I think the max it'll do is around 37 mpg. This is not the most fuel efficient. It would be nice to see Mazda, you know, add electrification to the Mazda 3, add their M hybrid boost, or make it a hybrid or something like that. We have no idea what Mazda's going to do for the next generation. I mean, to be honest, this car has been out for about 5 years now, and it's due for a heavy refresh, although Mazda tends to do more lighter refreshes. I mean, we got the new screen this year, which finally adds wireless Apple CarPlay, and it's also a touchscreen where I can actually use this as a touchscreen while I'm moving, although the reach, as you can see, is very far. You can turn off that touchscreen function when you're moving in the actual settings. I had to go and turn it on myself because it defaults to turning off, but I believe it stays like that once you actually do switch it. So this is nice, although I wish Mazda had moved the screen closer. But overall, I think what holds the Mazda 3 back for me is the fact that it is cramped on the inside. I mean, some competitors offer far more space on the interior, which is going to be important for folks who are taller, who are just wider of frame. And if you're looking for better fuel efficiency, this car is not the one you're going to want to get. Obviously, the reason why a lot of people are buying the Mazda CX-5 over the 3 is the fact that they like the higher seating position, so you do sit fairly low to the ground in this car, which I actually like. I like the low feeling it gives you and just the sportiness that you get going through some corners and whatnot. But overall, if you guys, you know, are resistant to getting an SUV and you still are looking for a compact car, compared to its rivals out there, the Mazda 3 is definitely still on the sportier side, and it is one of the quickest accelerating and one of the few that's out there where you can get the top engine with all-wheel drive. So after spending a full week with the latest 2024 Mazda 3 Turbo Premium Plus hatchback, I have to say, for those of you who wouldn't be caught dead driving an SUV, I know there are still a few of you out there, the Mazda 3 is still very much a solid choice. I just don't think it's no longer the standout choice that it once was, because as you guys know, this segment continues to grow smaller, and if you guys are looking for the best fuel efficiency, this is where the Mazda 3 kind of lags. Now, if you want the best acceleration, this is among the best. 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds very consistently. Basically means you'll be able to keep up with some Volkswagen GTIs from a stoplight, because as you guys know, the GTI will have a little bit of trouble putting the power down. Not so with this car with the all-wheel drive system. The transmission is really kind of the biggest letdown. It's perfectly fine in day-to-day driving. It's just when you want to drive a little bit more spiritedly, if you guys plan to take this to the track or you plan to attack your favorite back road, you'll notice the limitations, of course, with the transmission. The torsion beam rear suspension also may make itself known in those more extreme conditions. Overall ride quality on this car is definitely on the firmer side. I like the updates that Mazda has made for 2024 with the new 10.25-inch infotainment display, which has their latest Mazda Connect head unit, which finally has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, along with a wireless phone charging pad, and it also works as a touchscreen when this vehicle is moving. So love the fact that Mazda has made that change, but I'll be curious to see what Mazda plans to do for a significant refresh, because I expected the company to show us one for 2024. Perhaps they're going to push it now into 2025. It would be nice to see Mazda add their M Hybrid Boost, which is their mild hybrid system to this car, but I suspect that won't show up until we get an all-new generation of the Mazda 3. But overall, it's still a very solid choice, and if you guys are looking to put one of these in your driveway, pricing is going to start at just over $24,000 for the base 2.5 S sedan. Now, if you guys want the hatchback, it's around $1,500 more, so just under 26 grand for the hatchback. If you guys want the turbo engine, the turbo is going to cost you at least $30,000 for the turbo, which for the carbon edition does come standard with all-wheel drive. I believe it's around $33,000. This version here, the Premium Plus, which basically includes everything like the Bose stereo, the surround view camera system, the heated seats with the heated steering wheel, although I would like to see Mazda put ventilated seats, and the sunroof. This model here with the $450 charge for the polymetal gray comes in at just over $38,000. I know we're looking at a Mazda 3 that is almost $40,000. That actually is a little bit of sticker shock for me. I personally didn't think this car should be priced near $40,000. I mean, that territory could get you into a Mazda CX-5, which is probably one of the reasons why people tend to buy a CX-5 over a 3. Sales of this car have dropped consistently over the years. Mazda did just under 30,000 units in 2022 versus 155,000 units that they did in the CX-5 during the same model year. So again, if you can keep the options in check, I'd probably say skip this top trim version unless you can find a deal from a dealership, because I personally wouldn't want to pay more than $35,000 for this car. But I suspect because the Mazda 3 isn't quite their best-selling model like the CX-5, I imagine some dealers are willing to kind of discount this car. So if you can get it for a good price, this is definitely one of the best options out there if you can't decide between something like a GTI, which may be too sporty and you want all-wheel drive, and something too economy-minded like a Honda Civic hatchback. Well, with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Mazda 3 Turbo Hatch. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.